class. We're back again with chapter 3 of Tom's Sausage Lion. Just a quick recap. So at the end of chapter 2, Tom found out that Claire had also seen the lion on Christmas Eve, although she didn't have her glasses with her, so she sort of doubted herself, and her dad didn't believe her either. But in a way, because Claire has now said that she saw the lion, that confirms to Tom that this lion does exist, and it also gives him an ally, a team member to go out and prove to the grown-ups that there really is this lion out there. But all we've got to find out now is how they're going to do it. Chapter 3. Perhaps if we told the police, Claire said, perhaps they'd believe us. We've got to make someone believe us before he gets hungry. What do you mean? Tom said. Well, once he gets hungry and there's no sausages to steal or dustbins to rob, he'll have to kill. Got to eat, hasn't he? Listen to this. She opened her book again. When it hunts, she read out, it shows a daring skill and cruelty equal to that of a tiger. One is reported to have killed 50 sheep in a single night. Do they kill people as well? Tom said. Claire shook her head. Hardly ever. Well, that's what my book says anyway. Only when they're very hungry. The police station was just 5 minutes down the road from the school. They came back. They could be back by the end of playtime. They sneaked out of the school gates while Mr. Morgan's back was turned and ran all the way there. The policeman looked down at the two breathless children and tapped his pencil on the counter. Lost something, have we? He asked. No, said Tom. We've seen something. The policeman sounded bored. Oh, yes. And what have you seen, then? Flying saucers, is it? Or pink elephants, perhaps? And he snorted with laughter. A lion, said Tom. I seen a lion running off with Mrs. Blunden sausages, and she's seen him too, haven't you? Claire nodded. Close as I am to you, she said. Now, let me get this clear. You've seen a lion, have you? Running off with Mrs. Blunden sausages. Is that it? Yes, said Tom and Claire together. And what colour was this lion? Said the policeman, leaning forward on his elbows and smiling at them. Purple, was he? With green spots? Do you think the policeman believes them? I think it's another grown-up who thinks that they're just mucking about. It was a puma, said Claire. A mountain lion. It's in my book. They come from America. Sort of tawny yellow colour they are. So this lion swam here all the way across from America, has it? The smile left his face. What do you think I am? I wasn't born yesterday, you know. Now you get along out of here and stop wasting my time. Lions indeed. Whatever next? Get off with you before I call the sergeant. They walked back to school in silence and slipped into the playground without being noticed. Playtime was still on. I've been thinking, said Claire, sitting down by the railings. You could search that moor forever and never find him, couldn't you? Suppose so, Tom said. So we've got to tempt him back, haven't we? How? Tom asked. Food, Claire said, taking off her glasses and cleaning them with her skirt. That's what he came for in the first place, wasn't it? He wouldn't have risked coming near your house if he wasn't hungry. So why don't we put out some meat for him to tempt him back? You could keep a lookout and photograph him when he comes. If they saw a photo, they'd have to believe us then, wouldn't they? Got a camera, have you? Tom shook his head. No, he said. Well, I have, she said, and it's got a flash on it too. You can borrow it. And where'd you get the food from? Tom asked. My dad's a butcher, remember? Claire said, and breathed on her glasses. I'll bring some into school tomorrow. All right. Got a new girlfriend, have we, Tarzan? It was Barry. You Tarzan? She Jane? Is that it? Tom was surrounded by grinning faces, and Barry began to growl at him like a lion, and then everyone copied him. Something snapped inside Tom. He had had enough. He threw himself at Barry, kicking and punching until they ended up rolling on the ground together. Mr. Morgan broke through the crowd of chanting children and pulled them apart before any real damage was done. But Tom was glad to see that he'd given Barry a bloody nose. "So it's fighting now, is it, Tom Goss?" Mr. Morgan said. "Quite the little lion heart, aren't we? What's the matter with you, boy? Never seen you fighting like this before. Haven't you been in enough trouble today without this? Now get inside, the two of you. Tom, you can clean out the guinea pigs and wipe down the blackboard. Barry, you can sweep the classroom and tidy the bookshelf. Off you go, and more of this, and I'll bang your heads together. Hear me?" No one dared say a word about Tom Sausage Lion after his fight with Barry. There were no more mocking growls, and Tom was feeling a lot happier when he got off the bus and ran up the lane towards home. Sam usually ran out to meet him, but he wasn't there today. "Where's Sam?" he said as he came into the kitchen. His mother and father were sitting at the table. Father still had his boots on, and he looked grim. "Good day, dear," Tom's mother said, as usual, standing up and wiping her hands on her apron. "Take your coat off and I'll get you tea." "Where's Sam?" said Tom, who could tell from their faces something was hidden from him. Something was being hidden from him. "Gone," said his father. "And if he knows what's good for him, he'll stay away too." "What's happened?" said Tom, half out of his coat. "What's the matter? What do you mean Sam's gone? Gone where?" "I don't know, and I don't care," said Tom's father, and he looked up at Tom. "I warned you, and I warned you. I told you to keep that dog of yours shut up, didn't I? I told you he was getting out of control." "It's not your fault, dear," said Tom's mum. "These things happen. We've lost lambs before." "But they weren't just lost, were they?" his father said, banging the table. "That dog of his killed them." "Sam?" said Tom. "Sam killed some sheep? He couldn't have. How do you know it was him?" "Because I saw him. I saw him running away, and that's good enough for me. Just after lunch it was. First thing I saw was the sheep bolting across the hill on the other side of the brook. I thought it was a fox at first, so I came out here and got my gun. By the time I got out there again, there was that dog of yours with 3 lambs lying beside him on the ground. The shot frightened him, and he took off up into the woods, going like a train." "You shot at Sam?" "You shot at him?" shouted Tom. "Course I did," his father said. "What do you expect me to do? Stand there and watch him killing my sheep? I had to frighten him off somehow. Oh, don't worry, I didn't hit him. I was too far away, and I was aiming above his head anyway. But as soon as he comes back, that dog will have to go. You can't have a dog that kills sheep on a farm." "You mean you'll have to put him to sleep?" said Tom. "But you can't. You can't. It wasn't him that killed those sheep. It couldn't have been. Sam's not a sheep killer. He's been around sheep all his life. He wouldn't kill them. It was the lion. It must have been." "That was no lion I saw out there this afternoon, Tom. It was Sam. He killed those sheep, and when he comes back, he'll have to go. That's all there is to it." "It's not fair," said Tom, trying not to cry. "It's not fair. Sam didn't do it. I know he didn't. And what's more, I'll prove it." And he shrugged on his coat again and ran out of the door. His mother called after him to come back, but he ignored her. He ran down across the meadow behind the house and jumped the stream at the bottom. There were no sheep left in the field. His father must have brought them in for safety. But halfway up the hill, he saw the wool on the ground where the lambs must have been killed. From the wool there was a trail of blood on the grass that led up to the fence and into the thick oak wood beyond. He stopped at the edge of the wood and called out, "Sam! Sam!" and he put his fingers into his teeth and whistled. The valley echoed, but there was no answering bark. He crawled under the fence and made his way into the wood. Every now and then he stopped to call out for Sam, but all he ever heard was the hoot of an owl and once the cry of a startled pheasant. It was getting dark now, but he ran deeper and deeper into the trees until at last he could see the other side of the wood and the open moor beyond. He stood still so he could listen. "Sam! Sam!" he called out, and suddenly, from only a metre or two away, he heard a rustle of leaves and a faint whimper. He found Sam lying at the foot of a tree. There was a gash on his front leg and one of his paws was covered in blood. He was panting hard, his pink tongue lolling out of his mouth. He looked very tired and weak. "Are you all right, Sam?" said Tom, kneeling down beside him and stroking his head. "Where have you been, Sam? What you been up to? I bet I know how you got that cut. You stood up to that lion, didn't you? You're not afraid of anything, are you? Not even a lion." He looked closer at the wound. "Oh, it's not too deep, Sam. You're lucky to be alive, you know. I can't take you to the vet, and I can't take you home either. I'll just have to look after you myself. If I tell them you were only trying to look after the sheep, just trying to do your job, they won't believe me. If I tell them you chased away a lion, they wouldn't believe me. See, Sam? They think it was you that killed the lambs. That's why Dad fired that shot at you. But I expect you know that already. You're not stupid, are you? I'll have to find somewhere secret, somewhere safe for you to stay till they find out it wasn't you that did it." He picked up Sam and carried him down to the stream. He sat down beside him and washed the leg until all the blood was gone. Sam kept looking over his shoulder and whining. Tom thought it was the wound that must be hurting him and washed it more gently. "Got to keep it clean," he said, sitting back on his heels. I've got it, he said. "There's one place where they'll never find you. Ghost Cottage. That old ruined cottage on the other side of the wood. Father keeps a few tools in there and some hay, but no one ever goes there in winter. You'll be all right, Sam. You'll be all right. As soon as I've found that lion and taken a photo of it, then they'll all know it wasn't you that killed all those lambs and you'll be able to come home again. But I've got to find the lion first, haven't I, Sam? And he's out there somewhere on the moor. I know he is. You chased him out there, didn't you?" Tom never looked up into the great oak tree above his head. If he had, he would have seen the mountain lion stretching out along a branch, watching him. He was tired and hungry. He'd never even had time to eat the lambs he'd killed before that dog was on him. He'd tried to fight him off, but the dog was too fierce for him. He'd tried to outrun him, but the dog was too quick for him. There was only one thing to do: climb a tree and hide. He was still hungry, but at least he was safe. I'll just show you. There, just checking you can see, is the lion up a tree. And we'll come back for chapter 4 to see what happens next time. See you soon.